coming. There you go. Hello, how are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you doing?
I am good, and I am obviously technology challenged today.
It's been a bumpy couple days.
It has.
Welcome everybody to Binders and Clips. Thanks for joining us after this stormy few days. It is August 6th, and we just had Debbie pass through Sarasota County.
We did. Thankfully, I have lights today, and not all of our neighbors do yet. We still have people in our community who are underwater, unfortunately, and without power. And, it is I've been in this community, I don't know, since 2000. And this is probably, from an impact standpoint and water, one of the worst storms I've seen here locally.
I agree. And it reminded me of that storm last year a little bit that pulled through and really had a lot of water with it, a lot of wind with it. But this one seemed to stall, and the back end of the storm had water like I've never seen before.
And water in places we've never had water before.
I just got an alert on my phone from the county saying, call 911 if you need to be evacuated. That's why I was distracted.
Yeah, I got it just before we started. I actually got a text message, and then I got a phone call. So I think they are still doing water rescues in Sarasota because the water in certain places is still rising.
Well, we've had an awful lot of building in this county and an awful lot of wetlands and in other areas that used to be able to help mitigate some of this. Just gone.
Well, we talk about, without being political, that your vote matters and who you put into office, in elected office, who's making policy decisions, whether it's at the school board or the county commissions or the state house or national. It matters and it impacts people in their houses.
I have to add, though, it matters who you vote for, and it matters what people campaign about. But if they don't keep their campaign promises once they get in, I have a very smart neighbor, and she says, once these people get elected, they go and they get their arm put around them by somebody, and they say, oh my gosh, we're so glad you worked so hard. We're so glad to join you. Now you're part of the club. Come, let us show you how things are done here. And that nobody wants to really do what they say they do. And that's my biggest frustration with our local school board. No matter what they campaigned about, and we waited forever to get 4 votes to make a difference here. And now they're all like head in the sand, not responsive. However, what they say up on that dais, you would think we've got the best district in the country. So I agree with you. It matters who you vote for, but it further matters to hold people accountable once they get into office.
Absolutely. And being aware of, I always like the analogy of the race car drivers, and that they wear their suits, to drive in, and then it's covered with the patches of who sponsors them. Like, so, this driver's driving, number 7, but it's really being sponsored by whatever corporation. I think it would be helpful if our politicians had to wear those kind of suits, because then you'd know whose dollars put them in office and what's, the objective of the person that helped them get to where they are. Because those kind of things matter in policy decisions, no matter what party you prefer. It works the same way.
Well, and that's a really nice segue, because what we talked about in the last podcast was those 2 teachers who have been charged with swindling, taking tax dollars, providing education they didn't provide, and all of that stuff. Didn't make any news. There was no news about those 2 teachers.
No.
And we sent an email.
I'm going to beg to differ there. Binders and Clips Media is all over this story. But our traditional news that in the community, our local paper, our local TV stations, you're not hearing anything about this right now. And that was before the storm.
Well, and let me ask you, Susan, wouldn't the state education agency also have some culpability here?
Absolutely. I mean, we reviewed that in the last podcast that the US Department of Ed was really clear that, particularly for students that are incarcerated, that the state education agency has oversight or should have oversight of making sure that those students are getting the education that they're entitled to. So if this fraud has been perpetrated for as long as we suspect it has based on the information that's publicly available, how did it go on this long and it didn't raise a red flag for anybody? And word on the street was that people knew.
People knew. So what happened? Were they treated like us, where you kind of ignore them until you prove it and file a lawsuit? Or do you just learn to keep your job and to get promoted? You just don't cause any trouble and make any waves, even though it's impacting the very students you are paid to serve. So who knows how any of that happened? But I agree with you, because people knew and nothing happened. And we still don't have any answers from any school board member or the superintendent as far as, why did you limit the scope of the investigation? And why did you give them so much grace with the hours? I was thinking about what you said, Susan. Even if their contract says they must get paid for those hours, if they do not have students there to serve, they have the data to say they had students there to serve. So I think that was quite a bit of grace.
Yeah, I'm not saying that policy shouldn't have the technology to know in advance whether or not we have students that are there. But again, I'm always looking for the best in people.
Yes.
And giving them the benefit of the doubt and extending grace. But when it comes to our responsibility to educate students, and adults are intentionally not doing what is expected of them, we need to figure out how not just hold the people who did it accountable, which absolutely should happen, but there should be systems in place that prevent those kind of things from happening in the first place. But even if they do, because sometimes people just make bad decisions, have ill intent, it happens. But how does it go on for a year, 2 years, 6 years? We don't know exactly how far back this extends, but where are the checks and balances to make sure that and what other things besides this incident are also having failures and nobody is picking up on it? I mean, is this
People are picking up on them, but they're choosing to do nothing about them. I can tell you that firsthand. Yeah, it doesn't matter.
well, which is even worse. I mean, sometimes the system is broken and you miss something. The checks and balances are missing. If the checks and balances are there and nobody's caring to balance things or to check on them, then that's an even more insidious use of taxpayer dollars and harm to our children.
Right. Well, when you pay people to say everything's wonderful, that's what they say if they want to keep getting paid. So the people that are hired to oversee the checks and balances don't want to hear about what the real problems are. It's absurd to me, which will be a different conversation. How do you pay someone for being two places at the same time for years and not catch that?
Right. So again, is it a leadership problem? Is it a systemic problem? Is it a policy problem? and who's in charge of figuring that out?
Right. I think it's the community that needs to come together, and all this noise about the left or the right or the, whatever the soundbite is and why you need to vote this way or that way. We need to unite and be issues focused if we're ever going to fix any of this, because the people making the real money off the backs of kids want us to be divided and fighting, because it eliminates them being accountable. Even though they want to sit up there and say they're accountable, it eliminates them to be accountable. Similar to the conversation we had yesterday with the start of the school year, and some of the tone we're getting from parents being treated dismissively, in my opinion. And I think the person that we spoke to yesterday heard us, because there was a change in tone finally, but it is a top. So if you're listening, thank you for hearing us. And but it definitely is a leadership problem we have here in Sarasota County.
Well,
Definitely.
and you and I both know lots of people who work in this system, and the pressure that we can feel, like feels like a pressure cooker to me this year, the start of the school. They have all new technology that's been brought in all at once, and they're expected to learn it, embrace it, use it day one. You know, I'm really, you're going to laugh when I say this. I'm never opposed to change. I really am not. I just like change to be something we really need to do. Like, are we changing because something needs to be updated, something's broken? Are we actually fixing something? We shouldn't change just for the sake of change. We should have a really clear purpose of why we're instituting new things. The second thing is the people who are expected to implement change should be part of the discussion as it's being, decided and rolled out. They should be invested in the change. We have a big ship they're trying to turn, and if the people who are at the helm don't communicate to the navigators and the people who swab the decks and all of the people between, from the bottom to the top, then people don't understand, back to the report we started talking about, the how and the why of what is happening. And so when you have people that feel disconcerted as they're starting on the beginning of a new school year, because all of this change has been thrown at them in a very short amount of time, what does that do for our families and our children who, will be starting school in less than a week? And not to mention, some of them are now going to come in with trauma from this latest storm that we just lived through.
When was Ian? Ian was 2 years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, 2022, October, end of September, beginning of October.
Oh, so school had already started.
Yep. But we live in a storm-prone area, and so it's not that our community isn't used to how to adapt to storms or respond to storms, but the week before school starts, you have people who've now lost their homes, they've lost their cars, they can't get to the school buildings. We don't yet know, I don't think, the status of all of our campuses. I know I saw a report online for some of the county parks even have damage, that they're parks, not all of our parks are reopened yet.
Well, I'm going back to what you were saying about all the change and rolling out all the change. I agree with you. And some of this stuff was because, so we've had lots of change in leadership. I will scream from the rooftop, I was not a fan of our last superintendent. I just was not. He did not help us at all with fixing any of the broken problems. But I think it was the dumbest move ever and the costliest move ever to do what Miss Rose did and make a motion to get rid of him. It caused so much tumultuous, people irate in the community. Again, the focus was off what the focus should have been on. And the fact of the matter is, his contract was ending. So by the time they negotiated and paid him to get out and paid him all this stuff, his contract, he would have been gone anyways. They just didn't have to renew the contract. So again, I think it's more kabuki theater. However, he bought, and the school board approved, lots of the technology that they're now implementing currently, because nobody implemented it during that interim period. And there's also been new technology purchased that they're implementing currently, and it's impacting parents as well. So there was a social media post that the district did on, I don't remember what day, maybe Friday of last week. I'm sure it was Friday of last week, telling parents to use this app and log on to this place. And hundreds of people were posting because it didn't work. And they rolled it out on a Friday where there was no one to call when, parents were like, well, my school's not showing up. Or one of my kids is showing up, but the other one isn't showing up. And so lots of technical difficulties with this. And again, rolled out poorly if you can't call anyone for support when you're told to do this the week before school starting, when we're hearing people aren't getting answers from when they call their school campuses. I don't know if it's too many calls and not enough people to answer them. I don't know what, maybe they don't have answers. Who knows? But a lot of the changes that have been rolled out, people are uneasy and would like to talk to someone. So they rolled this out on a day nobody could call and get answers. And I just did one little sentence. I said, this was rolled out poorly for teachers and parents. Susan, I can't tell you the number of people that were private messaging me, teachers and parents, but they're scared to put the post out there because they're scared of people being mad at them.
Yeah. And you know what? This is not meant to be criticism. It is meant to be critique. And if we don't identify things that aren't working, how do you, and I know you say, well, people don't necessarily want to fix them, but truly, how do we fix things if we don't identify what we try and it fails? I know Miss Rose, she said in that one clip we listened to that productive failure. And I think we might rely on that too often. I think we need a paradigm shift.
Okay.
And I think we need to do a little more planning and a little more thoughtfulness as we try new things and try to avoid some of the productive failures that we keep having. Although I'm not sure how productive they actually are.
Yeah, I think she's going to not like the paradigm shift. She might not like the shifts that come in this next election. But
well, I don't want to be political about this election. I just want to say that the beginning of a school year is always causes anxiety. It's just because it's new stuff. You have families that have children who are nervous. They have to go find sometimes a new campus, always, a new teacher, new staff. Where do I have to be the first day? How do I get my lunch? Where do I drop my child off? Is the car loop the same place that it was last year? We've heard we've got new security measures coming this year. We haven't even talked about that yet, but apparently magnetometers are coming to a school near you at some point. And how does that change the procedures for getting in and out of the school?
Or the binders your kids are carrying.
Yeah, right. If you have metal on, does it make a ding? And then what happens? Kind of like TSA at the schools. So anyway, and again, I'm not a person who doesn't think if we have something that's broken that we shouldn't have change and fix it. But all of the stakeholders that are impacted need to understand what's the game plan.
And if you look at the district website, which I just pulled up, jobs posted, we have an unprecedented number of jobs that are open to start this school year. it is shocking to me. And we've been beating the drum for years saying, do exit interviews, ask people why they're leaving in mass. And we've had a mass exodus from Sarasota County of really good teachers. And you're never going to fix it if you don't find out why they're leaving.
Right.
So there was no intent to do that. And now it's going to be, oh, the poor shortage. I mean, they've got eligible for $3,000 prorated supplements to entice some of these teachers to come teach here.
And we know nationwide, we're hearing across the education spectrum that school districts are having trouble attracting high quality, competent, experienced teachers, and that there's openings. So I don't think that's unique to Sarasota, although I agree with you. Our HR practices help us not be in that situation, or don't help, depending on what they are. We also know that recruiting and looking at where are teachers, graduating from, so we attract the new teachers as they're coming out of classrooms to bring them in. And is this an enticing place to live and teach? Is it do people want to be employed here in Sarasota? Is it a good culture? Right? So if all things are equal pay-wise, what you're looking at is, am I coming into a culture where I'm trusted and I'm valued, and my voice, if I have an opinion about something, it's heard, and I'm supported? Am I being mentored? Do I have the material? Sorry, I'm going to keep going. The materials and the tools that I needed. Why would somebody pick a certain district and want to be there? And are we creating an environment where that is true so that we can attract the best and brightest here?
So, sorry.
What are you apologizing for?
I'm sorry, my phone rang and it moved the screen.
Oh.
I agree with you. And the new superintendent we got instilled a hiring freeze. So we certainly had, within the last year, enough staff to support our schools if we had a hiring freeze based on the enrollment we had and the people we had employed. There were plenty of contracts non-renewed last year. And now we don't have teachers to fill classrooms.
And we know that 100% true, because some of the families we work with couldn't get answers about who is your child's teacher. And one of the answers we got was, well, the teachers don't actually know which class they're assigned to yet. And that was just
the teachers were frustrated. Yeah. And then in our district, we made clusters all over without any kind of reason after school choice was over, that parents could use the voucher to go to different cluster sites if they so choose, but they didn't sell it well. Why would parents want to go somewhere that's unknown?
Well, and we know those are some of the positions they're having difficulty filling. Again, I remember being that parent with two little kids and trying to get myself together to start the school year, and knowing what materials to buy, what does the teacher want, where are my kids going to go, what kids are in the class with my children. Like, there were so many of those soft things that made such a difference in being able to prep my two kids with disabilities to be okay with starting the new school year. I mean, kids are pretty resilient, but if we don't set them up for success, that's kind of our job.
And that was one of the ESE recommendations, was if you're going to transition these kids, do it with a plan so you have success and you don't have the behaviors that you're seeing through the roof here, which are impacting the teachers, which create more need for more behavior specialists that we can't find anyways. So it's like a self-inflicted craziness that that is not transparent or accountable. So I think, Susan, the one thing that I did find interesting was after the podcast we did last week talking about the 2 teachers, so 2 more jobs that someone has to fill.
Right.
We've got no answers from either the school board or the superintendent, but I'm wondering if they possibly are going to be discussing this at the school board meeting publicly that they're having. And the reason I'm wondering that is, so we had 2 other teachers arrested here in Sarasota County recently, and they were charged with both of them crimes. And one was a teacher at Venice High School and the other Sarasota High School, I think. And in June, they were both charged with crime. One had a relationship with a student, and I can't remember the other one, but it had something to do with drugs. And each school board meeting on the consent agenda, so typically not discussed, there is one item that is staff changes, instructional and classified staff changes. And it's pages and pages and pages of people moving, retiring, being put on leave, whatever it is. And those 2 other teachers that got arrested appeared on like page 30 of 35 or 28 of 32, or towards the end, it was just 2 lines, resigned, personal reasons, resigned, personal reasons. However, I found it interesting, and I don't know if you've got that handy, the 2 teachers that were charged that didn't get any media attention, we were talking about it, but no one else. Can you show everybody, this is what that personnel report looks like? And so on the very first page.
Right, because it's under A, administrative leave.
Oh, so they didn't resign.
Right, they did not, they're on administrative leave. So the resignations are at the end of this report, but people that are just on leave, it's in a different order. So I think the front page being on the, at the top of this is because it's under A, administrative leave.
So we have evidence that both of these teachers did not deliver education as per their contract and were paid for it. And they're on administrative leave. Does it say without pay?
Without pay.
Without pay. But on both of their police reports, I thought they said neither one of them said he was retired, I thought.
He did.
And the other one said, didn't she say she was unemployed?
Yep.
So you can just say that to law enforcement, even if it's not true?
Well, you reported that you worked with kids that you didn't actually work with. So I can't imagine that, continuing an untruth would be a hard stretch.
Well, I had high hopes that maybe the district would talk about this publicly, or maybe answer some of the questions, or say, here's what we're going to do to investigate and give compensatory education for these students. But that bubble burst.
Wondered where you were headed. So
no wrong direction, clearly.
Anyway, I think today really was just about giving people an update that we're still looking for answers. We're still concerned about this group of children that were impacted by the failure to deliver service. We don't know what oversight has been done by the state or what the district has done to resolve this for these students. We've asked, at least the district, and no information has been forthcoming. And so we'll keep asking the questions.
Well, and how the broken system stays broken is parents that are either A, intimidated or scared or not willing to publicly talk about what is going on. Because what we find, I think you said this in the last one, Susan, share with us, because if it's happening to you, it's happening to someone else. And how the broken system stays broken is the amnesia that these well-paid administrators have when it comes to things that are broken, and liking the public perception to be it's an isolated situation, when we know it's not. So the way to fix it is by speaking up and uniting and sharing concerns and demanding results.
You know, the spotlight has to be the only way you fix things that are wrong is by shining the light on them. And it's not about criticizing again. It is truly about identifying what's not working, who's it impacting, and how do we as stakeholders who have a stake in this help guide the system to improve for the people it's supposed to serve.
And so we've had people reach out to us that want to tell their stories. And I think that's something we're considering. If people would be interested in hearing stories, let us know. One parent reached out to us and said, how in the heck are they just now figuring out the tiers are broken? The tiers were broken when my kids, who are now graduated from post-secondary, they were stuck in tiers for years in Sarasota County. And so now it's a revelation, the tiers are broken. However, when you read what they say they do, what they give the state that they say they do, the tiers don't look broken. So,
And you're talking about MTSS, that process.
So I think it's just if people want it. So that was one parent that reached out. She wanted to tell her story. We've got others. So if stories would be interesting to people, if you'd like to hear that during some of these segments, let us know, whatever. And we really do appreciate your comments and your messages about the stories we are telling, and want to hear more about what you want to hear about.
And so I'd like to end today with saying we really are thinking about the people in our community who are still in distress. We hope that your problems from Debbie resolve quickly, that you get power back, that the water goes down, that your homes are okay, that if you need help, you get help. Again, we're getting text messages from emergency response that if you need 911, you should call it. So obviously we still have people who are needing help if they're putting that kind of messaging out. And as you're approaching getting ready in the midst of that to the beginning of school next week, if you aren't getting answers, please comment, let us know, because if we start hearing the same issues over and over, we're certainly happy to elevate those and let people who hopefully can solve the problem know that it's a problem we're hearing from more than one family. So stay safe, and thank you for joining us today. Bye.
Bye-bye.